And a very good afternoon to the Pick a Side Nation. This is James Finley once again coming to you. Today we have a very special guest coming into the lab once again. We have Miss Charne Principle Tunson. We'll explain that a little bit later. But I felt that it was necessary to bring her onto the show in light of what's going on right now with COVID-19, as well as people, they want to know, should they send their kids to school or should they keep them home? And that's kind of a decision that's already been made out here in California. However, because this show goes nationwide, there are some cities as well as some other places where those decisions have not been made as of yet, and pretty much are leaving it up to the parents. So, ladies and gentlemen, without ado, I want to bring Miss Charne Tunson into the show. How are you doing today, Charne?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
And once again, listen, I know that I have been saying this over the last couple of shows that I've done. And I'm sorry, everybody, but I'm sorry that I have to keep bringing people in from that that historical Black university on 11th Avenue called Crenshaw High School University. Charne is also a Crenshaw alumnus, and I can't help because, you know, our school produces some of the greatest talent that there is. So, you know, I try very hard not to have to do this, but sometimes when I have to dust off my Rolodex, it always turns to someone that's relevant and has been doing a lot of exciting things. So Miss Charne has been in education for a very, very long time. She literally, you can almost say, was birthed at Crenshaw High School. And so she has walked those grounds for a very long time. She's been a part of Los Angeles Unified School District for quite some time. And so no better person to kind of give us updates on how things are, how they used to be, and probably where they're going now. So, Charne, why don't you give everybody a little background about what you've been doing and kind of where you're going to now before we dive on into it.
That's right. Cougar for life over
Yeah.
here. So like
Hey,
James said, I am a proud graduate of the best high school in the United States,
No
Crenshaw
doubt.
High School.
No doubt.
And I was born. I was born. My mother, my entire family went to Crenshaw. My mom was a senior when I spent my first year of life running up and down those halls. And I graduated and came back as a teacher once I completed college. Shout out to Clark Atlanta University, the true HBCU, and came back to teach and left for a while, then came back as an administrator. So I've kind of come full circle at Crenshaw.
Yeah.
And very proud to have done so. And since then, in addition to teaching, I've also been an assistant principal at both LAUSD and some charter schools, and even spent this past school year as a principal of a small charter school in Watts. So I have made my circuit in education these past 22 years, and I just love what I do.
And, you know, and I feel that everyone should have a passion to what they want to do, because it makes that job not to be so hard. Mm-hmm. So, okay, so my first question out the box is, so when did you first get the itch to want to teach?
Oh man, I like to share the story. It actually was at Crenshaw. I was probably an 11th grader taking an art class, and I had this teacher who she was one of those teachers that would look at your work and say, oh, this is an A, oh, this is a B, a C, or a D. And so there was a particular artwork that I created, and she gave me a D on it. And I said, well, I don't understand why you gave me a D. So being the rebel that I am, I took my painting straight up to the principal's office. Shout out to Miss Noble, who was the principal at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, Miss Noble, take a look at this work. I just finished it. What do you think about it? She said, oh my gosh, Charne, that's amazing. I love it. I said, really? I said, well, what would you give me if you were to give me a grade? And she said, well, I'd give you an A, Charne. That's beautiful. It's amazing. I said, wow, that's very interesting. Because your art teacher just gave me a D and said, because that is how she felt it should be. So from that day forward, I told that teacher, I'm going to come and I'm going to take your job. Now, fast forward, that was 5 years. 5 years later, when I graduated from Clark, Miss Noble was still the principal. She told me, when you graduate, come on back here. I'll have a job for you. I interviewed at Crenshaw High School, and started work, literally 4 weeks after my college graduation. I did not start off in that art classroom,
Wow.
but the first semester I was a long-term sub and I taught economics. I was literally 21 years young, teaching
Wow.
18-year-olds, and they kind of taught me everything I needed to know about teaching that first semester. Those are some of the most amazing kids to this day. And needless to say, that following semester, I picked up teaching art in that very same classroom.
Mm. Look at God. Look at God. So let's talk. So what was it like to be a teacher uh, when you first started, compared to kind of like how teaching is now? I know that you're not teaching right now, but
Yeah.
you still have your foot on the ground in it. So how what's the biggest difference about it right now?
I think the biggest difference would be the student. This is a totally different generation. I started in 1998, and that is when technology was kind of just making its way on the scene. I remember in college, connecting to the internet where you plugged it in and you had the AOL and everybody had to get off the phone,
Hmm.
so you could surf the web. And so it was still a lot of traditional teaching, a lot of traditional ways of life for kids. And kids were still relying on their teachers to provide information. We were the experts.
Right.
Fast forward now to this 2020 bunch, and my youngest is 13 years old, and he's from the generation when they were in kindergarten, they had iPads. And
Mm.
so he grew up using technology and looking for information. And so now, it's not our job as educators to give the kids the answers, but they want to know why. They want to know the philosophy and the rationale and the feeling and the meaning behind it. And a lot of teachers are not understanding that. And so I think that's where that clash comes. And we have kids that have so much information and experience already just from the internet. I remember when I was in high school, and I was there when the LA riots started. It was actually sitting on a bus stop on Manchester and Western when it kicked off. And we didn't really know what was going on. And even still, all we saw was what the news showed us. But now, what just happened with the protests, our kids are there like live on the scene because people are live streaming and sharing
Mhm.
information. And so we have to teach this generation a little bit different. We need to have those courageous conversations with kids, and we need to answer that question when they say why. And I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest difference between the generation now and the generation, before, when I first started.
So the students, which leads me to my next question, which was going to be what is the difference between the students when you first started and the students now? Um, as you know, I spent a lot of time, on the campus of Crenshaw over the last few years, and compared to when I was going to school back in the '80s, uh, we we had teachers that we were afraid of, but it was not the afraid of, we had a respect for
Yes.
teachers. We had teachers that did not play. We had teachers that was not putting up with talking back or anything like that. And we also had an administrative staff that was going to side with the teachers because they was not taking any of that stuff.
Hmm.
So when I'm on campus nowadays, it's like a freight train that's getting ready to run in. I mean, the kids have zero respect. And it's like, what's going on? So how is that generation and the generation after me, and what's happening with the kids of the day when it comes down to the behavior factor?
Yeah. And you hit it. You really hit it when you said respect, and that's what it's all about. I think, even as an administrator, um, I really impressed upon my staff the importance of developing relationships. You lead with relationship building, and you will find that those teachers who don't understand that concept or who don't embrace it are the ones that are going to struggle. And you
Mm-hmm.
can have a relationship with a student but still be stern and hold those high expectations. um, but if you don't have relationships with your students, if and students, they see right through you. you know they know why you're there. They know if you care about them. They know if you're just there to collect a check. They
Right.
know if you don't have your stuff together. And they will call you out on it. And it's unfortunate because as an educator, we are the surrogates for these kids.
Right.
They spend more time with us than they do in their own households for the most part, especially if they're involved in extracurricular activities and things like that. But when we miss out on developing those relationships with the students, we miss out on everything else because nothing else matters. And so
Yeah.
when you walk onto a campus and you see the blatant disrespect and the utter chaos, it's because from the top to the bottom, they haven't taken the time to develop those relationships with the kids. And you will find out once you've done that, that there are some amazing, amazing kids. Some of the most hardcore wannabe, you know, thugging it out, baby kid, cussing you out from the front to the back will be the most genuine and sincere kid. They're kids at the end of the day. These are kids.
Right.
And a lot of them did not get the same childhood that we got.
Mm-hmm.
The whole come in when the street lights, your mama knew what happened before you got home because the neighbor went and told her and you got in trouble by everybody. That whole village and community is not what it used to be.
Right. Right.
And a lot of our students, they're fighting and they have these walls that are up, and many educators don't take the time to penetrate that wall, and it does a disservice. I remember a math teacher at Crenshaw, and the kids hated her, flat out hated this woman. And she made the comment to me one time and said, well, I'm not here to build relationships with these kids. I'm here to teach math. And I just looked at her and I said, well, good luck with that. Needless to say, she didn't last. But it's
Right.
like you
Right.
can't have that kind of mindset and that kind of attitude because these are human beings too. And the
Mm-hmm.
minute that we forget that is the minute that we lose touch with them. And no matter what programs, how much money you put into a school, what kind of people and experts you bring in, if the adults with the boots on the ground are not willing to establish relationships and have a mutual respect with the students, you'll never see change. You will.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to cringe when I hear teachers say, "I got mine." You know, I got mine, and because I feel like there are certain jobs. I think. Okay, let me put it like this: teachers and nurses, policemen, firemen. Did nobody putting a gun up to your head to say, "Hey, this is what you have to do."
That's right.
These are jobs that's where you have to have a certain type of demeanor to deal with it. This is not just a let me get a paycheck and go on. I mean, if you're a teacher, it's your job to teach, but there's so much more that comes along with that. And it just bothers me when teachers are just there from 8 to 3:30 to 4 o'clock. And when kids teachers teachers have to teach during lunch. Teachers have to teach
Hmm.
during, whatever nutrition break that they have. Teachers have to teach all day long while they're there. And that's just part of the DNA of a teacher. And like you said, students, they will look straight through you, and they'll know from almost day one what type of teacher that you're going to be. So, which leads me into this. So, uh, you've been on both sides of it. You've been a teacher, and you've been vice principal. You've been a principal. So, being a teacher, that's not at the top, but you've been at the top in a leadership role. And as you just said, it starts at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So, talk about being at the top and how it trickles down to everything else underneath.
Yeah, I think, that has always been my frustration. And it's one of the reasons why I went into leadership, is because I was the teacher that had the most amazing relationships with my students. And it would frustrate me because my classroom stayed packed from the time, sometimes even before I got to work, those kids would figure out how to get inside my classroom. But they would be there and they would be there all day because there weren't other adults in the building who they felt connected with, who were giving them the same type of I guess attention that they needed. And so I thought that by becoming a leader, I could then work with other teachers and staff members to
Mm-hmm.
develop this same philosophy. And it's tough. It is tough. You think you can't reach adolescents, but you try reaching adults, especially stubborn adults, and it gets very frustrating. Um, it's a never ending struggle. Even as a principal, I spent probably the majority of my energy and effort in developing relationships with my staff, with the hopes that it would then translate onto the students. And again, there were some that really caught on and embraced it, but there's always that handful that just frustrates you to no end, and they, in essence, become the cancer of the school. And you know, as a leader, it is our responsibility. You talk about the teachers, your job is to teach. We're all educators.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you are the security guard to the cafeteria to the custodian, we are all educators. And you're right, no one held a gun to our head and said, hey, go take this job.
Right.
And I have been very candid with my staff, and I'm like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. You signed up for this. You're going to do whatever it takes. There's no excuse. You don't hear surgeons saying, oh, well, I can't figure it out, or, oh, well, the patient is not responding, so I'm just going to throw up my hands and give up. Like,
Right.
no, what other profession allows adults who have the lives of individuals in their hands to just say, oh, well, I'm not going to do this?
Right.
And that's
Right.
my biggest frustration with education right now,
Right.
is it's too much adult centered and not enough student centered.
Right. And the one of the things now, which I did not know until I had taken an active part on being on the board. Um, Talk about the demographics in regards to foster kids. There are so many foster kids in the LA Unified School District right now. So talk about that compared, because when I was going to school, that was just unheard of almost. If there was
Mm-hmm.
some, it may have been a couple. And
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about, 4 or 5,000 students, but talk about now how the demographic of these schools are, the enrollments are so much smaller, but almost 40 to 45% of kids that are going to these schools are from foster care homes.
Yeah, and the foster umbrella is really really broad right now, because when you think about foster kid, you're in essence thinking about any child that is being raised or overseen or supervised by someone other than their birth parent. Okay, so when you talk about kids that may be staying with auntie because mom is doing whatever, or dad is not in the picture, or you're talking about kids that are being raised by grandma or grandpa, because mom and dad are whatever. And when you think about the high incarceration rates of Black and brown uh, individuals in the city and in the country, when you think about the substance abuse rate of Black and brown adults in the country. When you think about the mental health rate of Black and brown individuals, these individuals have kids. Well, where are their kids? Their kids, if they're not with them, they are being raised or currently under the care of another adult. And so then they fall under that foster umbrella.
Right. Right.
That's why those numbers are so phenomenal. You also think about kids who maybe got caught up in the juvenile system, and they're in these group homes because the parent has no control over them. So all these are factors that contribute to the high number of foster youth in our schools. And along with that comes moving around. You see kids being transplanted from one home to the other outside of their district, in other cities, um, constantly bouncing from household to household, which means they're changing schools, which means they have to learn to a new environment, adapt. They're getting further and further behind. Like all these things contribute to the low performance of our schools, because our schools aren't understanding exactly what you just brought up, these high numbers. Yes, it's a statistic on the school report card on the dashboard, but what exactly are they doing about it?
Right.
Do
Right.
the administrators even know which of their kids fall under this umbrella?
Right.
Just because a kid doesn't have a social worker does not mean they don't fall under the foster
Right.
umbrella. What type of supports are you giving them? You wonder why a kid is late to school every day. Well,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
because they don't have transportation, maybe because they had to get little brother and little sister to school, maybe because they didn't have anywhere to sleep last night. And then you want to
Oh.
put them out of the classroom
Wow.
because they don't have a pencil or they didn't bring their homework.
Mm, man, so it's just everything seems to filter down, from one level to another level to another level, because kids are affected with this, and then even right now as we're in this COVID-19, you know I just saw in the news today where one of the main things that were the concern when they had to shut all the schools down, it was okay, how are these kids going to eat? Because a lot of these kids, you know, after breakfast and after lunch, that's pretty much it. And
Yep.
so we're in a climate now where the schools, have to be responsible for feeding the kids, making have kids eat. So what has been your experience with that spectrum of it?
Yeah. I mean, schools are so important to our community. It is the fabric. It used to be the church was
Yeah.
the center.
Yeah.
Right now, it's schools, because, like you said, we have so many students that are, the term now is food insecure.
Oh.
So many students that are housing insecure. Um, and schools filled that void. When you had kids that would be at the school site at 6:30 in the morning and would be there late until the last adult left, now they don't have that anymore. Fortunately, there's some schools, and I know LAUSD is still continuing with their food service. That is a blessing. I know that at one time there was the SNAP benefit card that each student would receive. It had about $300 on it, but that probably lasted a month, and it was a one-time deal. So I'm hoping that, excuse me, that they bring that back.
Yeah.
But you're right. These are It's so much more um, for schools than just giving grades and high school diplomas.
Yeah.
It is the very fabric for our youth.
And listen, and my last question while we're on this. So tell me, what is it like now when schools have a back to school night? One of the reasons why I'm asking this question, I remember that Crenshaw was having a back to school night, and I was on the campus, and I was telling some other people, I said, ain't nobody up here. I'm like literally, like, where Where are the parents at? There was like hard, I'm exaggerating just a little bit, but for the
Yeah.
most part, I'm not. It was like
No, you're
hardly
not.
nobody up there. And I was like, this is back to school night. And so, and because Crenshaw was having a scrimmage that particular day or something like that. And I'm just like, there's no parents up here. So what is that like when a teacher sees, and I'm kind of like it like this. So when we have senior family members that has to go into nursing homes,
Hmm.
the people at the nursing home, they're going to really spend a lot of attention to the ones where they have family members coming up to visit them
Of course.
because they know, okay, they're going to stay on top of things. So the family members that's not coming up there, that particular patient is not going to get the care that the other ones would get. So
Hmm.
let's just take this to school. So how is it that when a teacher finds out that, your parents are totally not even involved in your schooling? So how is that? How does that go?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely true. And I've seen it. Schools will cater to that parent that they see. They would like to label them as the problem parent, and they'll do any and everything they can to avoid the problem parent from coming onto campus, when instead that's an active parent.
Right, right,
Um, and then, on the flip side, those kids whose parents are virtually non-existent on a school campus will fall through the cracks, or will be the kid that constantly is getting in trouble, or the school would you know um, put all the pressure on that kid. It is very unfortunate that that happens, because the students don't have an advocate for them, and they don't know how to advocate for themselves, because when they are advocating for themselves, they are being seen a different way. They are
right,
being
right.
seen as being disrespectful. They are being seen
Mhm,
as being volatile, causing
mhm.
problems, having anger issues. Well, this is the only way that kid knows how to advocate for themselves. And instead of the educators interpreting that as, I need help, they're interpreting as, you're a problem kid. I need to figure out what I can do to get you away from, this situation, or to get you away from me. And that's when we start to see these kids again being labeled, being kicked out, suspended, threatened to be expelled, traveling from school to school, or worst case scenario, dropped out, just falls off the face of the earth. Um, it's a little different now, I would imagine, that if schools were to have back to school nights in person, there might be a little bit more parent participation, just because parents have had to become educators over these past 5 months. We know, we've seen the Facebook posts and the memes and everything about parents, teachers, whatever you need, I got you, come get your child type thing. But you know, that's important. What you just said is parents for far too long have not been involved enough. I like to say, because I do live in the San Fernando Valley, and my kids attended, what was known as one of the top schools in the district. But being African American, we were definitely a minority. And I spoke at our African American parent group, and I said, one of the reasons why we don't see more of our parents here is because we're comfortable. We think, oh, we worked hard to move into this nice community and to get our kid into this great school, that everything's okay. We need to be hands off. When in fact, we need to be hands on, because despite all the great things about this school, there's some things going on that we need to know, especially related
Right,
to our kids.
right,
And
right,
so
right,
the same
right,
thing is true at our schools, our underperforming schools, or even our high performing schools.
right.
Parents are the heartbeat of the school. You make or break what happens at your school. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much power in the parent voice, and
Mm-hmm.
schools are nervous with
Yeah.
parents.
Yeah.
Back to school night, that's just a show. That's just to show parents, like, oh, we hear all the great things that we're going to do this year. So if parents show up, if you get a large crowd, that's great. You can put on this great show. And if you don't get a large crowd, that's great too, because now you don't have any expectations to live up to.
Right, right.
Lets you know, like, okay, we could continue business as usual, and not put our best foot forward.
Wow. Well, let's transition. Let's transition to 2020, and I think that everybody can say that this particular year will be a year that no one will ever, ever, ever forget. So, with all of the inner city communities and the issues that we'd already have with kids going to school, now you have kids that are not going to school. So, uh, so my question is virtual learning, is it effective?
Hmm. That's a great question. Virtual learning is as effective as in-person learning was. Okay, because the only thing that changed was the environment. The teacher is
Okay.
still the same, the student is still the same.
Mm-hmm.
But how are you going to now bring your A game?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to compete with all the other distractions that are present in that student's home life. And that's tough. That is really tough. Especially again when we go back to talking about these kids who are food insecure, they don't have food at home, housing insecure, they may be staying with relatives, don't really have a place of privacy to even set up a desk, even if the school is providing them with the computers and the internet, that's
Wow.
great. But what about the environment and the other tools? And so virtual learning is only going to be as effective as the adults that are facilitating it. And that's
Wow.
scary.
That's a yeah, that's scary because I look at some situations and I just be like, man, is this kid gonna get a chance? Is this kid going to have a chance to learn anything? The way that things are set up. So with the way things are, especially out here in Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles, uh, now the mandate has been passed down to schools are going to be start off online. So do you feel like that's a good choice, or do you feel like the kids should be in school and just take a chance on contracting the COVID-19?
Well, you know what? I don't think it's taking a chance on contracting the COVID-19. I think it's going to happen. And we've seen that in the schools across the country that have already opened. Just from July alone, schools that have reopened and students returned, we've seen a surge in over close to 100,000 cases of COVID-19 in students, whereas before the youth were the ones that were not contracting this disease. So
Right, right, right.
there's no way, no how that my kid will be stepping foot on anybody's campus, nor will I, as a school leader, step onto campus until we've gotten a handle on this. It simply is not safe and it's not worth it. I feel like having kids to return to campus is the easy way out. And I'm tired of educators taking the easy way out. Yes, distance learning is tough, um, but you can't just try to go back to business as usual. There's
Hmm.
so many factors in this, and it's going to start at the top with the funding because right now all schools budgets are frozen. So whatever you received last year is what you're going to receive this year. That doesn't matter if your enrollment went up or down. And so what we're seeing now are like the charter schools are putting a cap at their enrollment because they have to. They don't have all the extra funding that that the traditional district schools have. But what that means is um, the resources are still scarce. Schools that were already struggling to have books and technology and nice clean facilities are still going to struggle with that because they have to now put money toward the protective gear, the safety and sanitation procedures. We're talking about 6 foot apart, so limiting the number of students in a classroom. So now the small class sizes that we've been asking for years are mandatory, but there still hasn't been any solutions to the funding. Where classes that were once 30 plus now have to be 15, which means you need to hire additional teachers, but then you need to space them out. And there are just so many factors. Like, I honestly don't even think that schools will be coming back in January. Like, it's just ridiculous. And so, it's 2020. It's 2020. We grew up watching the Jetsons and all these other things. Let's get with the technology. Let's figure out how to make it work. We need to create these hybrid school environments, where if you're going to do some face to face, then you need to come up with a schedule where kids are coming in maybe 2 days a week, for 90 minutes at a time, working with the staff members that way. And then the other time they're virtual. There's a lot of talks, at least in the communities out here, where I live, parents, switching to homeschool and creating what's called the learning pods, which is great.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, it furthers the educational divide from those who have and those who have not, because the parents in my community, they can afford to do that, and they can
Right.
afford
Right.
to hire a tutor to come in and work with those kids, whereas the kids in the inner city, they don't even have a home environment where they could gather, a small group and work together. And so we need the business sector to step up and partner with the education industry and come with some real solutions, because again, parents need to go back to work. But how can you go back to work if you have an elementary school kid who has to learn from home?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
until we get these people, the right hand talking to the left hand, and we coming together, it's a very difficult situation. So, we know that just sending kids back to school is not the answer. We're talking about 100,000 kids. Are you kidding me? It's in what, 4 to 6 weeks that have contracted COVID-19. You know?
I saw that picture down in Atlanta. I used to live in Atlanta, and so I'm very familiar where the school was located. And the picture of all those kids in the hallway, now, hey, last year that was fine. This year it almost looks like a horror movie, because it's like you just don't know who's asymptomatic, and it's like you don't know who's going to contract it and take it back home. And I saw something on social media the other day, and it said, over the summer, your kid has learned how to do 25 TikTok new dance moves virtual. So surely your kid can learn, from home on the computer. I think that parents just gonna have to take it and just say, hey, listen, hey, I have to be more involved
Yeah.
in this, and as you just mentioned about being homeschooled, I see more and more people going that route for their kids to be homeschooled.
Hmm.
You are a proponent in that?
You know, I am a proponent in anything that's not traditional education. I honestly feel like every kid should have an individual learning plan, because every kid learns differently.
Hmm.
I'm also a proponent in a partnership between the school and family. Like, schools cannot just leave the families to figure it out. We
Yeah.
can't just post assignments in Google Classroom and say it's due on Friday. Good luck.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need to train the parents. How can you set up an effective learning environment with what
Mhm.
you have? Teachers should be having conversations. All right, come on, turn on your camera. Let me see your home environment. Let's brainstorm how we can make it
Oh,
work. You may
okay.
have 7 kids in this house. You may have 8 adults, and it's a 3-room house. All right, let's figure out how to make this work, because it's a partnership. That's how it has to be, and that's the only way it's going to work.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Administrators need to become experts in every single thing, and need to make it their business to equip their teachers with it. We have to start, like, I have to start that with my staff. Okay, let me see your work. Let me see your workroom. Let's figure out how we can set this up. Okay, you have a little one. Okay, great. Let me show you how to fix your camera.
Right.
If you
Right.
are, a young mom and you have to nurse your kid, let me show you how to set it up so that if your kid comes, ready to eat, and you're in the middle of a live session, how do we make that work? You know, this is new and it's new to everyone, but we need the innovation
Yeah.
and we need the out of the box thinking to get us through this. We can't rely on the same old people, like, LAUSD school board. I love you. I love you, and I appreciate the work that some of you have done over these years. But you
Uh-huh.
got to bring in some of these young, fresh ideas. You know, it's not going to work the same if you don't know how to make a TikTok video. You don't need to be working with students, and you don't need to be teaching adults who work with students. Because if TikTok is a way that's going to reach these kids, then you
Hey,
need to
you
embrace that.
better.
That's
You
what
know,
it is,
I think when we get older, for me, over the last couple of years, I had to really finally say, you know what? I have to embrace change. I have to, because if you don't do it, you're going to be left behind. And even when we've had to protest this year, I've been very critical of young people, especially millennials,
Hmm.
around my son's age. My son is 30 years old, and I've been very critical in regards to, man, what's wrong with y'all? Y'all be tripping. Y'all be straight tripping. But they during the protest, they showed me a whole lot of,
Yes.
about their mantle as humans right now, and they just not gonna take it. They not gonna take what we took, and so you just have to embrace it. So listen, uh, I have to give you an opportunity to talk. So what you all don't realize, to the Pick a Side Nation, Charne decided to take a right turn, left turn off that path of being at school. And she just said, "The heck with that, I'm done." for a whole for a whole lot of different reasons. And we're not gonna get into that today because this show will go for about another 2 to 3 hours. I know what some of those reasons are. And there's a whole listen, I could take Charnay and title this a whole different show, and everybody's mouths will be falling over like, oh my God, what? But we're not going to do that today. However, what we are going to talk about is the new path you're on with the Tungsten Leadership Foundation. So
Yes.
why don't you kind of give us a little brief idea of what you guys are doing over there for your foundation?
Yeah, so the Tungsten Leadership Foundation was founded a little over 11 years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
one of my greatest joys was being a student council leadership teacher. And I got such great success from those kids, just teaching them basic leadership
Mm-hmm.
skills, things that weren't being taught around school. And so I thought, like, well, why isn't this something that all kids should have access to? Not just the popular kids or the cool kids or whatever the case may be. And so I started the nonprofit organization as a way to provide resources and tools and different things to kids across, the city of Los Angeles in terms of leadership. And, since our inception, we've done things with the mayor's office, we've done seminars, we've done uh, trainings. We've done courses with Westchester and elementary schools and, Crenshaw, of course, so many things. And most recently, what we're doing twofold. We're not only supporting students, but we're also supporting parents and educators. And we have a program for parents. It's called Distance Learning for Parents. It's online training and support group for parents of students who are involved in distance learning. Because, like, I talked about, parents were just thrown this and learned, like, here you go, good luck, I'll see you, in
Mm-hmm.
August, kind of thing. And so it really is a support for parents. It kind of shows them what their students are experiencing. It kind of gives them like a peek behind the curtain of the virtual the virtual teaching and learning. We
Right.
also have the Classroom Free Educators, which is all about training for teachers. How do I do my remote learning? There's so much out there. Where do I get started? Oh my gosh, I am not a techie. How do I figure it out?
Mm-hmm.
So we have that we're working on as well. And then we also are in the process of starting our own virtual homeschool for students and families who feel like, okay, I'm not getting the support that I need
Right.
with my public school or with my charter school. I really need some individualized support, because they're the one group of students that really kind of got the short end of the stick through all this are students with disabilities. And that simply is just because they already were not receiving 100% support according to what their IEPs had in place. But with distance learning, every excuse out the book came. Well, how am I supposed to deliver this? And how am I supposed to give this service? And blah, 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 you know. And so I know that there's so many parents and students with disabilities that are frustrated. And that is a major focus of our virtual homeschool. And then also to create a space where kids can get that social emotional support, because
Hmm.
that right now is tough. And I remember years ago when Fortnite first came out,
Yeah.
and parents were like up in a tizzy about Fortnite. Like, my kid is just on this, and, and and I wrote my first book. It's a little short, like 10 pager. It's called The Parent's Guide to Fortnite. And what I found in watching my son interact with that game and his friends is it's a fantastic way for kids to interact socially, to critically think, to work together, collaboration and teamwork. Um, and it's a video game. And to be honest, it's been a lifesaver, because while my kid has been cut off from his friends, and this boy was super active. I mean, his schedule was busier than mine. Monday through Friday, he had baseball and basketball and this and that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to be forced to be home, it's
Hmm.
like the video games, and I'm talking about the video games where they are collaborating and interacting with their friends, has been a lifesaver. And so really learning to embrace that. And you talked about how proud you were of the kids during the protest and things. And I want to point out, like, this is the generation of kids that grew up with Minecraft. They grew up with Roblox. They grew up with Fortnite. They grew up watching the Hunger Games,
Yeah.
Divergent,
Yeah. Yeah.
Twilight.
Yeah.
And so they see things differently
Yeah.
um than we did. And I thought about that, like, wow, they are very resilient. And I think as adults, we don't give them enough credit.
Yeah.
We don't give them enough encouragement, and we don't have enough high expectations for them to navigate through this. I bet you
Yeah.
if we pulled together some of the schools brightest students, as well as some of the more lower performing students, and
Hmm.
had them come up with a plan to save education, I
Hmm.
bet you they would solve
They
it.
come up with it. They can
I,
come up with it.
they'd solve it. They'd
Yeah.
solve it. And
Yeah.
so, we have to think about that. And so, what my foundation does is it really comes up with programs and opportunities to unleash the hero and the leader within our youth and young adults. Um, I'm also excited to be running for the Los Angeles Community College District Board
Great. Great.
trustee, seat
All
number
right.
one.
Great.
There are no minorities on the board. There's only one female, and she happens to be a white female. Um, and me, as an advocate for students, my platform is all about the student voice. What is it that our youth, our young adults need in community college? It's not about the adults. I know
Yeah.
Los Angeles Unified School District has been back and forth with negotiations with UTLA and the school board and the superintendent. But what about the kids? I
Yeah.
understand there's some concerns about teachers having to be on Zoom, for so many hours, or the Zooms being recorded. It's
Yeah.
like, but what's best for kids?
Right.
And
Right.
if you can't
Right.
answer that question, then you need to go back to the drawing board. And so that's kind of where the idea for the foundation came. It's like, what is best for kids? And every decision that we make that's the first question we ask. Well, is this what's best for kids? How does this impact kids? And
Hmm.
if we don't have a satisfactory answer, we go back to the drawing board. And
So,
I just hope.
quick
Go ahead.
question about what you just said. I know when I visit on your website, and we're about to run out of time a little bit. So, talk briefly about the IEP program.
Mm-hmm. So an IEP, it's an individualized education plan, and it's for students who may have a learning or a physical disability. And a lot of times there's a negative connotation to an IEP, especially in the Black and Brown community. And it's ironic that this is a podcast. I actually did a podcast recording about it a couple years ago. The stigma attached to an IEP. And in all honesty, I feel like every student should have an IEP because every student's education needs to be individualized. But what an IEP does is it identifies areas that a student may need improvement in, and then it sets goals for the student to have some improvement in those areas. And then, in addition to the goals, it lists certain supports in the form of accommodations that will help to facilitate the student in meeting those goals. A lot of parents don't understand the process and the power that they have in their child's IEP. Um, they also don't understand that there needs to be accountability.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have the right to ask questions. They have the right to disagree.
Right.
They have the
Hmm.
right to obtain a second opinion.
Hmm.
They also have the right that if they feel that their school is not providing the meaningful education, they have the right to request to have their child be placed in another school, whether it's public or private. A lot of
Oh,
parents don't
wow.
know that. Yes.
Wow.
So there are a lot of things that parents don't know. Some of our kids um, suffer from disabilities, and especially now, if your child has been diagnosed with depression, anxiety, that is a disability. There are
Mm.
certain accommodations that could be put in place to support your child.
Wow.
And those are things that parents don't know. Some parents don't even believe that depression and anxiety is a real thing, but it is. Especially now,
Yeah.
we see the numbers that are going up.
Yeah.
Kids, youth are taking their lives right now because of the isolation, because of the sense of hopelessness. Um, and so we have to be aware. And even if you don't have a child that may have a disability, um, you should be aware of it because you may know someone. You may
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
the source of information for someone else.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So tell everybody how they can find you on social media.
Real simple. I'm on everywhere at Principal Tunson. Just Principal Tunson. I keep it simple. Um, I celebrate being a principal. It was by far the greatest job that I've ever had. Um, and I forever will be a principal. And so you can find me Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at Principal Tunson. I believe I have a website at principaltunson.com as
That's
well.
cool.
I
That's
may need
cool.
to update that, but you can find me there. You can email me, principaltunson@gmail.com, if you have any questions about distance learning, if you have any questions about maybe your child is not receiving the supports that he or she may be receiving. I actually have a free webinar for parents. It's called Houston, We Have a Problem.
Mm.
How to identify if your child may need additional supports in school.
Hmm.
And I can provide the link to that webinar to you, James, so that you can share it with your viewers. It
Absolutely.
tells them
Absolutely.
all about, an IEP or 504 or which one would be better, for your child, if at all, and just some other helpful tips that
That's
are there
cool.
for you.
That's cool. Well, I want to appreciate you for coming on today. This was last minute. This was probably not even a full 24 hours. I had put a question out on, I put a post on Facebook yesterday about 97,000 kids contracting COVID-19 in over the last 2 weeks. And so I got a lot of dialogue on it. And I was like, man, let me get in contact with Charne. Well, I'm going to say this as we leave out today. Uh, I've always been a big admirer of you with your profession. I used to watch you from afar, how you used to handle the kids over at Crenshaw. And uh, you have a lot of quiet support that is simmering for you to embrace the big office over on 11th Avenue. I I hope and I pray that somehow, some way, that your talents and your efforts would lead you back over on 11th Avenue between 52nd Street and 50th Street because you are needed. And I do know that the community is changing, but everybody loves some Charne Tunson. And, I've had an opportunity to be able to talk with some of the younger kids, and that know you, and they are crazy about you. So, if it's God's will for you to do that, hey, He'll open the doors for that. But I hope that you won't close that door if it
It's
does
never
open.
closed.
All right, okay.
Crenshaw is my life. It's never
There it is.
closed.
Okay, all right, everybody heard that. All right. So hey, I'm gonna have to get the people out there so we can see what's going on. All right. Well, listen. Hey, thanks for coming on. I certainly appreciate it.
Of
Everybody,
course.
don't expect for this particular podcast to have all the editing. This is raw because I want to get it out there to everybody. So
Yes.
I'm going to say this in my closing, as I always say, keep God first place in your life. He will take you places that you never dreamed of. What I did not ask you, when I'm going to ask you on the close, you're going to have to be really quick because we got about a couple minutes. You always say that it's always best for a student after that student graduates to go out of state to go to college. Really quick, tell me the reason why you feel that it's important for a kid to experience going out of state as you did going down to Atlanta.
You know what? I just feel like at some point we need to grow up because you can always come back home. Now, given things are a little bit different right now, so that may not be the case, but you can always come home if what you see you don't love. But if you never leave, you never know what else is out there, and you may never get that opportunity. College provides you with the opportunity to have food and housing and an education and to grow up in 4 years. Okay, now I am a proponent for those who may not have that desire to stay home and go to community college.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have the opportunity to leave, give it a try and come back. I left, I went to Atlanta as well. I loved it. I fell in love, but at the end, I wanted to come back home.
There it
Now,
is.
every day, I'm like, I tell my hubby, come on, let's go back. He's like, no, we here now, we staying.
Yeah. Listen, yeah,
But give it a
yeah,
try. You have
yeah.
nothing to lose. You have
Atlanta is
nothing
second
to
home,
lose.
but yeah, you have nothing to lose. Well, listen,
That's
thank you
right.
so very much. I appreciate that. So everybody, you guys have an opportunity to pick a side. Hey, she says, take your talents outside of the state of California and go to school and kind of grow up and learn what other cities and places look like. And if you just want to
Right.
stay home, you can do that too. Hey, Miss Principal Tunson, thank you so very much. I will catch you on the other side.
You're very welcome. Don't
All right,
forget to vote,
everybody. Thank you for
everybody.
coming in.
Go vote.
Hey, that's it. That's right. Vote. Please vote. All right. Thanks now. Talk to you later, Charnay.
Okay,
All
bye
right.
bye.
Bye.